For the 2024 NFL season that's upcoming, the Detroit Lions are going to have a lot of expectations that are placed on them, but one particular unit is going to be under a massive test to be able to perform. The question is, will they rise to the challenge? We're going to talk about it in this episode, folks. Stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and three toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5 end zone touchdown Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions fans. Welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. So, here's the thing, folks. When it comes to the upcoming 2024 season that the Detroit Lions are getting ready to start, all their preparations for, training camp, preseason, and obviously the regular season, everybody knows that the 2024 season is going to be a big year for the Detroit Lions. And the reason is because the Lions are considered one of the top teams in the Super Bowl contention right now. They're considered one of the best options to make a run for the Super Bowl. And they're contenders for a title. Now, considering the fact that the Lions have never won a Super Bowl in the entirety of the Super Bowl era, that's big news. That is a big piece of news for a lot of Lions fans, and there's a lot of hope, there's a lot of optimism for it. And when you think about it, over the last 4 off seasons, or 3 years of actual football, the Lions have spent a lot of resources which have culminated in their team being one of the most complete rosters in the NFL, but also one of the deepest. They have a lot of talent not only in their starting units, but they also have depth at very pretty much almost every single spot of their roster. And then to add further, the Lions also have a very recognizable cast of players that have, to add to everything, their production, their awards, their name recognition. They have a lot of guys that everybody in the NFL recognizes, such guys like Jared Goff, Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, Penei Sewell, Aiden Hutchinson, Frank Ragnow. These are just some of the guys. Aleem McNeil is another one. There's a lot of guys that the Lions currently have that are very recognizable. They're very good at what they do. And you have to think about it. All that's very good for the Lions. It's a good thing that they have recognizable talent. It's a good thing that they have great talent. But I'm going to tell you this right now. The one thing that a lot of Lions fans are wondering about going into the 2024 season, is how the Lions are going to stack up against some of the top talent going into this year. And I'm not saying like they can't stack up. They can. It's one particular unit that a lot of people are talking about. That's the defensive secondary. Because you have to think about it. The defensive secondary has largely been the Achilles heel for the Lions over the last 2 years. We have not been very good at stopping opposing passing offenses. But this offseason, for the second offseason in a row, the Detroit Lions, under Brad Holmes, made massive renovations to try and get the defensive secondary on pace to be able to be a Super Bowl contending unit. Because realistically, we have to understand something here. The Lions have a top 3 actually rush defense. They have a top 3 offense. The only thing that's really missing is the Lions' ability to stop quarterbacks, to stop opposing passers from shredding us up like a freaking turkey on Thanksgiving. So realistically, the Lions took their time this offseason to make sure that defensive secondary is primed and ready to make a Super Bowl push, because that's what's going to truly be the ability for them to make that successful Super Bowl push. Everything else has already proven that it's capable of being able to do that. They have to be able to stop passers. That's what the biggest point of contention is going into 2024. But despite the great investments that the Lions made this offseason, which they made quite a lot of great investments in the defensive secondary. They drafted arguably the best cornerback in the draft in Terrion Arnold. They got another really good cornerback in the second round at a great bargain piece in Enos Rakestraw. They traded for Carlton Davis. They brought back a lot of the pieces in their safety room this year. So again, there's a lot of good talent now in that secondary. But like I said, Despite the great investments, the Lions still have challenges that must be overcome. And they're not, I tell you again, they're not going to be easy, especially when you consider the fact that two of our top starters, most likely, in the defensive secondary for the cornerback room are rookies. But one challenge that's really, like I said, going to put the Lions to the test is to see how well the secondary can step up and or stop and slow down the passing offenses that they're going to face. Because that right there, I'm telling you this right now, not the ability of the offense to go out and be successful again for a third year running. Not the ability for the Lions defense to be able to stop runners. The ability for us to stop opposing quarterbacks. That's what's really going to be the true litmus test, if you will, to see if the Lions can make it to a Super Bowl. Let's first and foremost look at the facts from this perspective. Number one, when you take a look at the Detroit Lions schedule for 2024, 8 of the Lions games will be against top passing offenses that were at least top 15 in 2023. And that's just for passing yards. And that's the basic parameter that I'm going to use here, passing yards. I know people can talk about passing averages, completion percentage, touchdowns, whatever. I'm just talking about yards. When you think about it, of those 7 games, because of those 8 games, 5 of them are going to be against teams that were top 10 in passing touchdowns as well. So you have 8 games that are going to be against teams that were freaking top 15 in passing yards. But then on top of that, 5 of those 8 games are going to be against teams that were top 10 in passing touchdowns. So you're talking about some really, really damn good passing offenses. What teams am I talking about here? What games am I talking about? I'm talking about the Cowboys. I'm talking about the 49ers. I'm talking about the Packers twice. I'm talking about the Bucks. I'm talking about the Texans. I'm talking about the Rams. And I'm talking about the Seahawks. Those are the 8 games in total. So, that right there ought to tell you something. Half of our schedule is going to be against some really hot, really good offensive units in terms of passing yards. The second fact is this. The Lions will be tested early on this. It's not like they're going to get time to get ready for this. They're going to get tested very, very early. Let's think about it, folks. The Rams and the Bucks are our very first 2 games in the NFL season. Now, the caveat is, at least those games are at home. But to put it even into further perspective, of the 7 teams that I mentioned in the 8 games that I'm talking about, we will play 4 of those games within the first 5 games of the season. So think about that. 4 out of our first 5 games are against top 10, top 15 passing units in terms of either yards or passing touchdowns from last year. Think about this, folks. I'm going to put the 4 teams that I'm specifically talking about here up on the screen so that way you guys can see it. I'm talking about the Rams. I'm talking about the Bucks. I'm talking about the Seahawks. I'm talking about the Cowboys. The only game within the first 5 games the Lions are playing that is not featuring a top 10, top 15, whatever passing offense by the parameters that I set up is the Cardinals, which go figure. But when you take a look at it, just look at those numbers that each individual unit that I'm talking about has. You're talking about a very prolific set of offenses that the Lions are going to have to go up against, either in terms of the fact that they got very good wide receiver cores, or they got really good quarterbacks, or in some cases, both. The Lions are going to have quite a bit of a challenge coming straight out of the gate in terms of passing offenses and quarterbacks and wide receivers that they're going to have to deal with. Which leads us into the second point, or rather, actually, I should say the third point here. The quarterback-wide receiver tandems that will test our revamped secondary. Just think about the 8 teams that I just mentioned here. Take a look at what each team has in terms of quarterbacks and wide receivers. The Rams, they have Stafford and Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. Then you take a look at the Bucks. They have Baker. They have Mike Evans. Then they have Chris Godwin. Then you take a look at the Cowboys. They have Dak, which they also have CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, and they also have Ferguson at tight end. Then you take a look at the Seahawks. They have Geno Smith. Then they have DK Metcalf. They have Lockett. They had Smith Njigba. They also have Noah Fant. The Packers have Jordan Love, Watson, Dobbs, and Reed. The 49ers, Purdy, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, and McCaffrey. Think about that. And then the Texans, they have C.J. Stroud, they also have Stephon Diggs, they have Schultz, they also have Collins. There's a lot of freaking guys that we're going to have to contend with over the majority of the upcoming season, number one. But within the first 5 games, like I said, Rams, Bucks, Cowboys, and Seahawks, that is a huge-ass gauntlet you're going to have to face. I'm just simply telling you, the Lions' defensive secondary, they're going to get tested, and they're going to get tested early and often. Because between all of those teams, the Lions have more than half of their schedule that they're going to have to face a good quarterback or a good assortment of wide receivers, or like I said, both. That's very difficult to try and deal with, especially when you got 2 rookie cornerbacks that are in this defensive secondary. Think about that. Now, I know some people are going to say, well, David, why did you not put the Buffalo Bills in there? We play the Buffalo Bills. Here's the reason why. Really, the only thing the Bills have going for them right now is Josh Allen. Oh, yeah, sure, they have Kincaid, but here's the problem. They don't have Stephon Diggs anymore. They replaced Stephon Diggs with Curtis Samuel, and let's call it for what it is. Curtis Samuel is no damn Stephon Diggs. At this point, you got a bunch of middling wide receivers, and you have a solid tight end for the Buffalo Bills. Pretty much the basis of the Bills' offense is Josh Allen. That's it. And then on top of that, you have to think about this. While Josh Allen is considered one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, let's just think about this. Since 2021, Josh Allen is second in the NFL for the amount of turnovers that he's given up. He's second only to Trevor Lawrence, and that's only by 1. Josh Allen has 59 total turnovers to Trevor Lawrence's 60. If Josh Allen is such a great quarterback, he's turning the ball over at such a very unprecedented clip. Now, one other team that I didn't mention that a lot of people have talked about, I personally don't want to include them here, but I know if I don't, I'm going to be called a homer, I'm going to be called whatever, is the Bears. And the only reason why I'm going to include the Bears is because of their wide receiver core. I really don't give a damn about Caleb Williams because he's a rookie. But when you take a look at the Bears wide receiver core, they have DJ Moore, they have Keenan Allen, and they have the new wide receiver, if I recall correctly, his name is called Odunze. If I have that wrong, I apologize, but I really don't care. The point of the matter is that the Bears could be a problem, and that's the only reason why I'm including them here. They could be a problem because of the fact that we're going to face them later in the year. If we were facing them earlier in the year, I wouldn't necessarily call it a problem because with the fact that you got a rookie wide receiver and a rookie quarterback, and the fact that you're also dealing with this whole new offensive scheme that they're supposedly putting in for Caleb Williams, I wouldn't be all that concerned about it. But we don't play the Bears until realistically the later part of our season. So that right there tells me that by the time we play them, their offense should, I'm going to put heavy quotations on this, it should be up and running, which means that could be a problem for our defensive secondary. But the flip side of that is our defensive secondary, unless of course barring injury, should be also up to the same ability to play as the Bears offense should be able to play by them. Because by that point, we should have 12, 13 games under our schedule? Whatever. Now, the savior of this whole ordeal that I'm talking about is that of the games the Lions for sure will have to contend with those 7 teams. Out of the 8 games that I'm talking about, of the 7 teams that they're going to have to contend against those top offenses, the Lions will at least have half of those games at home. Think about it. 4 of the 8 games that they're going to have to play against those really top units that I'm talking about are going to be at home. And 3 of those 4 games are going to be within the first 4 weeks of the season. And again, at home. The Rams, the Bucs, the Seahawks. Now, why is this a very important factor to put into place? Well, the reason why it's important to know is because, 1, we know the Lions play immensely better at home than they do on the road. The offense plays better, the defense typically plays better. And with the fact that it's going to be a young secondary, it's going to be their first time playing together, the fact that they're going to be in front of a friendly crowd will allow them to play a lot more loose and a lot more freely rather than feeling pressure if they were in a hostile environment. So that right there is a huge bonus for the Lions, especially for a young secondary that's going up against these really good passing tandems that they're going to have, whether it's with quarterbacks and wide receivers or vice versa. The second thing that this is going to do, having all of these games at home in the beginning against these top offensive units that I'm talking about, is that due to the offense's propensity, like I said, at home to be able to play at such a top level, think about it. If the offense is able to play at the top level that we've seen it play at the last 2 years, which I have no doubt it's going to do again, it should be able to take some of the pressure off the defense because the offense should be able to put out points like nobody's business. Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, they're going to do their thing. Ben Johnson, he's going to do his thing. I have no doubt in the Lions' offense's ability to be able to score points. So if the Lions' offense is able to continue to score points, again, it's going to take some of that pressure off of that defensive secondary and defense in general to try and have to maintain or keep up with the opposing offense that they're going against. Again, If for whatever reason the defense should fall behind, I totally expect that the Lions offense can be able to pick up the slack in certain cases. So again, having these games at home with a young secondary is, again, going to help out the Lions' ability to kind of get their feet wet in the secondary so that way they're not feeling all this pressure immensely right off the bat, especially if they were in a hostile environment on the road against these top offensive units that we're talking about here. My whole point is this. Everyone knows that the offense for the Detroit Lions is more than good enough to win a championship. Hell, we were literally with one quarter away from getting to a Super Bowl last year, just primarily based off of what our offense was able to do. The only thing our defense was really good at last year was being able to stop the run, which we were second best in the NFL doing that. So we were pretty damn good. But that was it. Our offense was good in both run, pass, efficiency, virtually everything. And when you think about it, the thing of the matter is like I said, we have a very good, very explosive, very dynamic, powerful offense. And our rush defense last year was the second best, right? If the pass defense can not only measure up to the difficult task of, going against these wide receiver and quarterback tandems, or just against a top quarterback or a great array of wide receivers, if they can just keep them in check, they don't necessarily have to shut them down. If they can just keep them in check, then the Lions very well could make that Super Bowl push for this season. Because again, think about it. We were one quarter away from getting to the Super Bowl with a very mediocre, subpar defensive secondary last year. If what we believe is true about Terrion Arnold, Enos Rakestraw, Carlton Davis, and everything else that the Lions have added this offseason, which I fully do believe in it, if we believe in it, and the Lions' defensive secondary can play at an average to above average level, then that will definitely be able to get us into the Super Bowl and possibly even win a Super Bowl. But again, I will say this now because I have said it before, and I will again say it. This puts a lot of pressure on Aaron Glenn to be able to get the defense to perform. Aaron Glenn is a former defensive cornerback. He's also a former defensive cornerbacks coach. If after 2 straight off seasons of renovating to the defensive secondary, if you're still not able to get this defense to perform, especially with all the investments that we now know that the Lions have put into the defense, whether it's on the defensive line, the linebacker, the secondary, it's going to put Glenn in a very uncomfortable spot. But I am expecting, I am believing, I am hoping, and dare I say I am praying that Aaron Glenn will get this young secondary to perform. It might be a little bit of a pipe dream. It might be a little bit putting it out on faith. But I fully believe that they can handle it. I fully believe that this defensive secondary will rise to the challenge, rise to the occasion, and will get the Lions what they need to finally get to that Super Bowl and even win a Super Bowl. But having said that, I decided I was going to put this episode together because, again, everybody wants to talk about the offense, but we also need to talk about the defense. The defense is just as important as the offense in getting to a Super Bowl. But having said that, I'm going to end the episode and say thank you all for watching yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to do one of these 3 things. Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If by chance you subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, or you just subscribed and not had a chance to do so, again, highly encourage y'all to subscribe to the channel. But I also encourage y'all to do this as well. Make sure you hit that bell notification icon at the bottom of the page so that way you guys never miss any more content that I push out. Also encourage y'all to share the content with your Lions friends and family members. Share it here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere you can with everybody and anybody that you can. And with that being said to everybody, I hope y'all enjoyed the content. I hope y'all are having a great day. I hope y'all got something that makes you happy, makes you smile. And with that, God bless. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.